So my name is Shankar Viswanathan. I'm in the product management team for planning. Some of you probably have seen me before. And with me, I'm joined by development counterpart Prasad Kulkarni. He runs the entire development for planning on-prem and the cloud. Of course, this is a roadmap-oriented session, so safe harbor applies. Before I get started here, I wanted to get a quick show of hands. How many of you are non-cloud, only on-prem? Why are you here? Okay. I saw that, when Prasad did the session yesterday, the whole room was filled up. Some of you probably are showing up here.
Shankar is just offended that I was able to pull more people than...
No, it's good that all those people, I see these as, people who are thinking about cloud, which is a good thing. So, quickly, for folks who are totally new to cloud, I haven't heard about this before. We started our journey just over 3 years back. I just put the main key points of milestones here, but over this period of three and a quarter years, we have delivered a lot of enhancements in this time frame, right? From a comparison standpoint, this is probably the 3 years where we have delivered the most enhancements. So in the middle of this, we delivered 11.124. So some of this got into the on-prem also. But the May release of PBCS and June, this month's release where we released strategic modeling as part of the platform for PBCS, those are obviously not going to make it to the on-prem, but significant updates here. And folks who are on the cloud, how many of you are PBCS customers here? Show of hands. Okay, quite a few here. So you guys get your release notes every month, so you probably have seen a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about here. If you haven't, then go back and please do read the release notes. That's why we release them. So what's new and recent? The reason I put the word recent in there because new is from the time the last K-Scope conference occurred. There's a lot of changes which have happened. So I'll cover the most recent ones rather than everything which happened in the last 12 months, right? So I kind of broke it up into, small ticket items keep getting released for folks who are familiar with the cloud. We have monthly patches which mostly focus on bug fixes, but there are incremental enhancements based on customer request, enhancements which are low-hanging fruits, which we think we can send out to customers with low risk. Those are given almost, once in a few months. But if there are big chunks of enhancements which have a more significant impact, we go through a significant more testing of it before we release it to cloud customers. So these are kind of the other features, kind of list out things which are released more on a month-to-month basis. So I won't read through all of this, but you kind of can take it from once I post this slide after the session. But the big item I want to point out on the left side here is strategic modeling, and I'll talk more in details. That's a new, folks who are familiar with HSF on-prem. How many of you are HSF on-prem? Anybody familiar with that? Okay, a couple of hands raised. We basically have been spending the last 2 years re-architecting that product into the cloud platform and bringing forth all that functionality. So that went out this month. We also I demoed this, both these top 2 bullet points on the left. I did demo of this on the Sunday Symposium for folks who are there. How to manage and create applications right from within Excel. So I'm not going to repeat that, but that was a big feature released in this month. So I'll cover some of those other items as part of this presentation. For any NetSuite customers here? Anybody with NetSuite ERP? Okay. For folks who are familiar with NetSuite, Oracle acquired NetSuite with over 13,000 customers, and we released the integration they don't have a native planning solution. Customers used to use Adaptive Insights, so now from NetSuite customer standpoint, they can use PBCS along with NetSuite. So that's a big update for those customers from a planning solution standpoint, what they can avail of. Okay, so diving into a little bit deeper on strategic modeling, went out this month. For folks who are totally unfamiliar with the HSF on-prem, essentially I put it into 3 buckets of what this solution does, right? It aligns strategy with planning, which means that planning is very good for bottom-up, but it's not the best tool for, at least till now, till June, wasn't the best tool for long-range planning, where you have to do a lot of volume modeling. You have a lot of scenarios and uncertainties which you have to deal with, which you don't control as much. So which means there's a lot of what-if modeling you need to do from a long-range standpoint. It could be as complex as mergers, acquisitions, or restructuring of the capital, or it could be just regular long-range planning. But in whatever case, you're going to do a lot more modeling and what-if scenario analysis. So that's why I kind of boxed out that middle section here, model for uncertainty, because it applies to both the ones on the left and the right. So this kind of our game plan with this, bringing all those capabilities, and there's a whole ton of capabilities. I won't be able to go through all of them, but take a look at the documentation. It's available even if you're not a cloud customer. You can go to cloud.oracle.com, access the documents, and it's available there. So essentially there's a lot of capabilities which just came on board into the cloud for all customers who are adopting planning on the cloud, right? Essentially, if you go with enterprise version of planning on the cloud, then you get all those functionalities. Our vision here is essentially to tie back the enterprise from a vertical integration, which means strategy ties to your operational plan, bottom up, which could be either rolling forecast or just annual operating plan or a combination of both. Or it could be, as we go beyond finance, we are also expanding with new modules or business processes, as we call it, which go beyond finance. So we release the workforce planning, we also release the capital expense planning and the projects financial planning modules. So strategic modeling is just an addition to these 4 modules which exist. You can use them all together or in silos as you choose to. Right? Our vision is essentially to complete that closed loop cycle, which I have a small depiction of a typical scenario. Right? You have regional business units here. So if you follow the numbers here, you have execs who need reports. And the reports are primarily could be driven from a reporting cube. The reporting cube gets its data based on targets set from within strategic modeling. So you define your long-range plan inside of strategic modeling. And those turn into targets for the near term. So you have your whole 5-year, 10-year what-if modeling going on. Based on all the what-if scenarios you can foresee, and then inherently the solution can come out with what you want as your targets. You push that down to your bottom-up, to your planning process, and then from there, basically the regional business units are inputting drivers into their planning grids, web grids. They're inputting assumptions directly into strategic modeling before that long-range plan is finalized. And eventually, essentially, all these pieces come together, all these folks come together, and you get the reporting. The reporting surface satisfies the use cases of the execs, regional business units, and also the tax and corporate FP&A, right? So that's kind of the nutshell of what's going on in this. And from a pure, architecturally speaking, the solution is well-oriented to satisfy that use case now, because all those capabilities exist in one single platform. So which means you're bringing in your source ERP system data as actuals coming into a typical ASO cube, as we call it in Essbase, right? You have your staging area. You can move that based on the level of granularity you desire to strategic modeling or to the operational plans. Your chart of accounts can be streaming into the specific areas. And then based on that, you do this whole cycle, closed loop cycle, and then the unified reporting can be in the same ASO cube or a different ASO cube. So you satisfy the staging, archiving, reporting, long-range planning, and the operational planning use case all in one single solution with this, right? So it's a unified platform, a common navigation for the user. The user doesn't know they're not going across multiple products. Unified data streaming, so you can actually do push data across strategic models and also operational plans. If you want to reset your long-range forecast based on the most recent operational forecast, you can do that by pushing up into the models. So those are all possible with this solution now. So for folks, especially in the room who are not familiar with it, there's a lot of capabilities. I just isolated some of the built-in modeling capabilities which are unique to the solution. And folks who are familiar with Essbase, these are some of these things are typically not possible, and for a good reason, but not possible in Essbase or in traditional on-prem planning. For example, you can vary your time dimension by each model, which is very useful in a long range because you might want to have your outer years to be in years, closer years to be in quarters, and the nearest year to be in months. So that's something you cannot vary by model in a typical Space cube or in planning, but this facilitates that. And you can change scenarios. You can add unlimited number of scenarios per model, and then aggregate those, which means consolidate across those scenarios for each model. So you can have a best case and a worst case scenario, aggregate it up to make it for a corporate level the best possible case scenario, right? So you can basically do a scenario blending across various models. Those are some of the key highlights from here I wanted to point out, which are unique and which typically customers cannot do in Essbase. And now with this all being in one solution, with an engine which is in memory, this is a complete solution which gives the best of both what Essbase technically can give, but also what is unique to strategic modeling is brought into one single platform in the cloud. Okay, so I did do a demo on Sunday for the strategic modeling core functionality. In the interest of time, I'll just focus on the integration piece here, just to show you how that would play out, right? If I stop this now, for folks who are totally not familiar with this kind of UI, this is a new UI we have, but this whole homepage can be customized. What I have here, I just want a small snippet of a use case of what's going on here, a long-range planning card created, and within that there's, if I keep playing this here, there's 2 web grids going on. So the first web grid, which is the first tab here, Sales US, is coming from strategic modeling. And this whole web grid is totally redesigned for folks who are familiar with HSF. It never had a web interface. Now it's all available on the web. So essentially the user is going in here and doing their driver-based forecasting. In this particular example I have, service revenue is being reforecast based on a forecast as growth rate. So I'm just going to reset the growth rate here in this line item, account number 020. And then based on that, immediately you have an instant calculation happening for the sales. And then that's basically being written down to the planning as a target. And then the targets are allocated down in planning. And then once the allocation is done, I'm going to pick up the changed numbers from the bottom-up plan and move it back into strategic modeling. That's kind of the gist of what's going to happen here. Right, so you have the what-if scenario. You have, if I go back to the planning side, so essentially this allows you to commingle artifacts, which means web grids, and from both planning and strategic modeling to show up side by side and see that calculations happen and the change of numbers instantaneously, right? So what's happening here is that numbers for sales net has been reforecast based on the change in the driver. And if you go back into the bottom-up plan, the numbers are still not changed. I go into, now I'm on the planning tab, but the user doesn't need to know that's 2 separate. So you go in and run the rule, and it just pulled in the numbers from the strategic models into the plan. It goes down and allocates down based on a specific percentage. The allocation is done. You take the service revenue, which is reallocated, and push it back using a different business rule back into strategic modeling, all happening with the user's action menus without the user having to do anything else. Of course, somebody is writing the business rules, and that's where Prasad will take over in terms of how we enable some of these actions inside of irregular business rules. Okay. Yeah, there is mapping you can do within your business rules. We also will have a UI to do the mapping. So typically you have a higher level of detail and lower level of detail in planning. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. With that, I want to just bring in, that's a good segue into the Groovy scripting, which is some of the components of Groovy were used inside of that business rule, which I just ran to push and pull the data. So Prasad, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Shankar. So before I go here, how many of you guys are actually familiar with Calc Manager? Written business rules in that Calc Manager? Okay, good. Because some of the reason why we are actually going out with Groovy is to solve some of the challenges we see in business rules. So what is Groovy? I guess those who actually are Here in the 60s, 70s, Groovy was cool, was the equivalent of cool. But it's actually, it's a mouthful definition for here. Like it's a agile dynamic language of Java platform. But at the end of the day, it's all it is a simplified version of Java. So why it is important? So we want to solve some challenges we have within our business rules, right? So for example, if I want to write a generic business rule and I would like to scope it down, what are the mechanisms we have today? I think we have runtime prompts, right? So you write a generic rule, your equation is the same no matter what. Left side of the equation equal right side of the equation, unit times rate, or whatever the equation you want to have. And then you want to focus your calculation based on the runtime prompts. But still that is limiting. Like a lot of times you want to actually have a narrowly focused cal script. And we know the cal script language is limiting in terms of what it offers you as a programming language. It's not a programming language, it's a 3GL. It doesn't have the for loops, it doesn't have, we try to mimic the for loop with some kind of constructs within Calc Manager, but it doesn't follow the same programming standard language, right? So if you want to generate a focused fixed statement, it's very challenging. So you end up writing a long script and hope that performs. And again, a lot of these learnings we have on our side because we delivered ePBCS, we delivered OnPrem modules, we have to write the same scripts like you have done. We have same challenges which you have been facing, and so we just said, okay, that's not a good option for our customers and ourselves, so let's see what we can do. So we come up with, we saw that we want to solve that. Another example is that I want to dynamically specify a parent member and on the fly and say project by its type. That's another challenge. Unable to validate whether the RTP value which is supplied is a valid or not. Unable to tie different PBCS function and rule set. So for example, I want to take some slice of the data, move it to SO cube on the fly. I mean, we have a smart push to do it, but still even more granular than that. And things like that, right? So then ASO cube. ASO does not support CalScript. It supports custom calc, but it's very limiting. So we feel that, okay, how do we support the model in case people want to write the scripting against ASO? So those are the kind of challenges we saw, which customers were facing, we were facing when we were writing the rules. So we said, okay, how do we solve that? So we said, okay, Groovy is the way to do it. So again, what is the prerequisite for writing the Groovy rule? That you need to be expert understanding of PBCS, which is probably most of you are here. Because if you know planning, if you know your metadata, if you know how Calc Manager works, how to write a business rule, you're expert in number one. I mean, all you need to know is where my data sits, how do I get the data to do calculation, how do I do the fixed statement, everything. So that's given. So PBCS experting understanding means is you need to understand planning, and actually in the actuality is understand the S-based constructs, etc. But what we are also saying is that in order for you to use Groovy, you need to know Java, ability to write Java code. So how many people know how to write Java code here? Okay, so I think there's a lot, looks like some learning curves for some people, but I can tell you that it's a lot more easier than to write CalScript. Not just because I can write Java code and CalScript, but I'm just saying in terms of its complexity. So if you know how to write CalScript, I think you can write Java code in sleep. No issues. It's that simple. You just have to learn certain basic constructs, which I think these days 7th grader, 8th grader can write Java code. So it's very, very simple. But it allows you to actually expand your horizon in terms of what you can do with it. So why Java? Why not anything else, right? So I think there are a lot of other scripting languages available. So there's a Lua, there is a Python, there is a Jython. You can throw any alphabets in English language and then shuffle, and then you probably will come up with a scripting language name. But I think Java is a language which is being used by almost everybody in the world, right? We hear like some 3.5 billion devices uses Java code. As far as the skill sets are concerned, right, there are about 3 or 4 million Java developers in the world. So the skill sets, if you look at it, is plenty. Again, it's a flat learning curve for Groovy. Groovy is based on Java. Then anybody knows Java, they can pick up Groovy in a day or two. The most important thing for us is that it's very smooth integration between Java and some of the performance benefits we get on the platform side. So all our products within Oracle, at least in the Hyperion world, whatever we have, it's completely written in Java. So you get that natural affinity because the platform is written in Java, the scripting language mimics the Java, it becomes easier. So you don't get this impedance mismatch. Okay, how do I construct JavaScript, the Cal script to fit into the model? And I'll get into the object model, what we're exposing for you, so that you will get the idea. Again, like it's been adopted everywhere, and then it's a powerful feature for both static, dynamic language. I think those are some technical terms. We don't have to get into details here, but generally, it's a very, very sophisticated way to write coding. And then secure, and then I'll go into domain-specific languages a little later. So, so basically what we are doing is we're going to support this new language, Groovy. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop supporting Cal script. The Cal script is there. This is in addition to Cal script. If you want to write a script which is much more sophisticated than the Cal script, you will be able to write it. And it will be a type of script which you will be able to write it. Then again, it basically performs calculation in Groovy. So there are certain calculations you can perform inside Essbase, and certain calculation you can take the data out, perform that in the mid-tier, and then write it back. And many times that's probably much easier and better than actually writing everything on the Essbase, relying on everything on Essbase to perform. We don't want you to replace everything, remove it from Essbase and bring it to mid-tier. You have to look at a case-by-case basis. So if you want to actually calculate, let's say, a few hundred cells, and we want to just bring that in memory, do the calculation, and write it back, probably Groovy is the right way to do it. If you want to do a batch calculation, I want to calculate this for my entire entity structure, then probably a Cal script is a still better way to go. You can, and then your logic of writing the script is very, very compact, right? So you don't have to write like 2,000 lines of code, which is very difficult to maintain. You can generate the script on the fly, and your script becomes very compact. So again, from maintainability perspective, writing the efficiency code perspective is much better. And there are other benefits, like you can have templates, and it allows you to generate the script. So I'm going to just go and the benefit. What is I mean, it's all good, but then can you tell me some benefits of what are the things you can do in Groovy we cannot do in Cal script? So let me give just one example of what you were able to do it. So I'm going to just do a demo. So I'm going to launch a form here. I'll explain this assumption. So before I go in here, how many times, how many people use validations in their data entry form? Okay, only a few. How many times you actually have a requirement coming from your customer or user to say, I enter an input which was a wrong input, and I would like to get a feedback to the users, or you want them to stop giving the wrong input? Only few. So you don't get anybody complaining that, okay, instead of 5, if you're allowed to enter range between 3 and 5, you enter like 2, and then the garbage data get in. How does the system stop that? So this is one of the problems we're trying to solve. Is actually if you notice that this is a project financial planning, so there are different columns. Like these are different line items. There is a phase, there is a job, there is an employee and there's a different drop downs here. There's employee resource, assignment start date, assignment end date, and then etc. Right? So if you actually enter a date, let's say for example here I'm changing the date from July to 1st of July as my end date. My FTs I change it to 3.0, and my start date is actually I'm going back in 2015. I don't know, it's not visible from the back. Apologize for that. But basically, I'm just pretty much entering a garbage data here, and I want to save here. So in typical scenario, what happens is when you save the data, you actually get saved. There is no error comes back. Here, actually, you get the error back, and at the tooltip, you can pretty much say that the date which you enter, this is a project financial planning, is actually before your start of the project, or the end date is after your end of a project, or FT which is used is a wrong FT. The range is between 1 and 3, or 1 and 2. So all data which is entered is wrong data. So please correct the data. So when the end user goes and corrects the data and it saves, and then it lets through that. So till that time, the data is not saved in SBase. So if the user says, okay, I don't have the right data, I'm going to just exit out of this, the data does not get saved to SBase, the data stays as is in the system. If they correct the data and save it, then obviously the data gets saved correctly. So this allows you to make sure that the user input, whatever the input data they have, is saved correctly without any problem. So we have this information about the object model. It's available. It's in the Academy. If you go to there is Groovy doc. So there's all information about the object model. So we have the notion called application type, and different types of. So it's a complete API available for you to use for writing your Groovy code. And if you want to actually you can also generate the script from here, but you can also actually use the data on the data entry form as a way to iterate over that data, look at certain patterns, look at what is entered by user is correct. You can compare the data which is sitting in the same cube, different cube, pull the data, compare it, use that data to write somewhere else. So you can pretty much do anything you want. So we have examples. We have given how to do that as an example. We also shown some coding examples. So it's pretty much very comprehensive in terms of what you can do with Groovy. And this is again is a very, very easy for some complicated business logic to be written with Groovy. Otherwise, it would have been written with 100 or 200 or 500 lines of code and difficult to maintain. So this is a very powerful feature which is available for everybody to use it in PBCS. Take advantage of it. I think my demo is done here. So I think that's what I wanted to cover from the Groovy. Any question before I turn to Shankar? Fantastic. Everybody's happy. Okay, Shankar.
So the next section, so we covered strategic modeling, we covered Groovy, and moving on to some changes we made in the simplified interface. We added, everybody's familiar with the dimension editor and planning. Over time, we have been slowly bringing forth all the functionalities available in the workspace interface, or we call it as a standard interface, into the new simplified interface. This is one item where customers used to have a lot of pain points because they could view the dimensions, but they couldn't add members, delete members, or refresh the database. They had to go to the old UI. So we kind of updated the new interface. And one of the key points, although everybody's familiar with what the functionality in a dimension editor consists of, but the grid itself we used has been totally enhanced. So the experience is very snappy, no matter how large your dimensions are, how many dimensions you have. The tree navigation, that's what I wanted to focus on when I go through this demo we had. So it's more of an ad hoc-ish experience. We took the functionality similar to ad hoc in SmartView and embedded that inside of this dimension editor so you can actually have a similar experience when you navigate through the dimension editor as an admin to actually maintain the dimensions, right? So going through this quickly, I want to make sure we stay on time, but if I need to, I'll move forward. But essentially what this is showing you is how to get to the dimension editor. You go to the dimensions, open a dimension, you can access it from there, and then access any other dimensions also from that. So this drop-down basically allows you to go to any dimension. I'm just showcasing an account dimension where you see that how fast the grid is moving in terms of collapsing, expanding. If you have like hundreds and thousands of members, this is going to be very fast, and there's no scrolling, there's no pagination, you don't have one page, second page, third page. It's all in one single grid. This entire grid is the way the strategic modeling grid which you saw is consistent with what we're using here in terms of its snappiness and speed. Right here, I'm adding 2 members on the fly inside the dimension editor, just naming it member 1, member 2. So you can name the members right there in place. I'm not going to refresh the database at this point. I just wanted to show you the use case of how you can add a new member. But so that's how you do it. And if you So if you think about it, all the functionalities are similar to how you have an ad hoc. I'm just going to now walk you through all the, so I'm going to undo this action. Okay, I do the refresh. So it just refreshes it. If you go walk through the dimension icons here on the top, it's basically show ancestors. You have expand, collapse. You have zoom in, zoom out. And you have, you can retain only, keep on, and keep only or remove only. All those actions which are you familiar with in ad hoc and smart view, all those are available right inside this dimension editor, right? And if you think about it, this is the paradigm the grid paradigm is what we are going to come out with in the web grids. So they are as snappy and fast as this. We had some really strong performance expectations off of this, in the sense that it had to render no matter how many millions of rows it has to render within a matter of seconds. So that's the expectation which was set when this grid was designed, right? So so basically I'll kind of shift over in the demo, because all this is doing is walking through some ad hoc kind of actions, right? So you can freeze the rows. Any row here can be frozen, so you have all the properties showing up, and you can also if you scroll across, you can, just like you do in Windows Explorer, you can right-click and add, remove properties for your view. So you can visualize differently based on your needs. And in the next couple of months, we'll also allow you to persist these changes. So as you make this dimension editor to be visible based on your own needs of what properties you want to visualize, we can persist that so that you see only what you want. And also from a formula perspective, you can click, just like in Excel, you can click the function icon. It will open up the member formula, and so you can edit it. And so basically gives you a sense, right? Okay, so let's shut this down. Gives you a sense of that. And that kind of segues into this in terms of what we are doing overall under the covers, right? There's a lot of work going on in enhancing the grid, because most of you work through the planning grids. It has to be snappy, it has to scroll fast, it has to navigate fast. When you pull down the scroll button, no matter how many rows of data you have, it has to move fast. All that is extremely swift here, right? So this is, if you saw that strategic modeling grid, which we newly created this month, that's something which incorporates the same functionality like that dimension editor, supporting large size forms, instant save. It's all available in the web forms. Prasad, do you want to add anything from the section, innovation standpoint? Okay. Okay, so moving on to what's coming, right? Quick high-level roadmap slide in terms of what we have is in the leftmost column, R&D underway, which means that we're not allowed to put time frames here, but this is actually underway, so we're hoping a lot of these things you're going to see before next case go, right? One thing's the hybrid BSO, we're going to touch on it through some slides here, so I won't talk to those 2 red bullet points. But we are coming up with the integration to the BICS or BICS, whereby you can actually use PBCS or any of the cloud products like FCCS, ePBCS, or PBCS and move the data to BI cloud service and consume that from there. Right. Okay. Do you want to talk on the hybrid quickly?
So, how many? Sorry. How many people know what hybrid is? Hybrid is based. Okay, good. Significant number. No. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. So actually, what hybrid? So for those of you who don't know what hybrid is, SBIS team has done a fantastic job of marrying BSO and ASO technology to come up with a technology called hybrid. What it allows you to do is actually, it allows you to do the pure technical terms. If you actually have your sparse dimension, which are large, in BSO, you cannot make the upper level members dynamic calc because it takes a long time to do the roll up in regular BSO. You can do that very easy in ASO. It can roll up very fast. That's what people do. That's what people do to get the fast aggregation in ASO. But the challenge with ASO is that it doesn't support the business rules or the syntax which BSO Cube does. So they married it together so you can actually write the business rule as well as you can make the dynamic aggregation of sparse dimension very quick. So you get benefits of both worlds. So they have released that on-prem, but planning has not certified that on-prem. So some of you might be using it, but it's not certified on planning. And the reason why it's not certified on the planning because right now the way it is working on the on-prem version for SBase is there are a lot of things which planning customer needs are not supported. Attributes not supported, some cal scripts are not supported. There are many features. There are many things not supported than what is supported. So we work with SBase team, and actually we work with them for almost 2 years to get them work with us to satisfy every single need which planning customer has, so they actually can support the use cases, planning style use cases. And so that release is coming out that we will be able to certify hybrid very soon in cloud. And then right after that, we will actually roll that out to the on-prem customers. Now, one of the benefits we see using hybrid is if you look at it by reducing by changing the dynamic calc at the upper level, we see a block count go significantly smaller. So if you see, then one of the test cases we have internally, it's gone in one of the cube, we saw 17 million blocks has reduced to 347,000 blocks. So order of magnitude reduction. Obviously, number of blocks reduced means you get performance issues taken away. Performance is fantastic. Your database backup recovery is fast. So there are all kinds of benefits just by reducing the size of the block. And if you look at the next slide, the size actually on the disk itself is gone significantly down. So one of that, the same application, the page size which we had was 2 gig, reduced to a few hundred meg. Now that few hundred meg by actually can be easily fit into memory. So again, if you guys are familiar with S-based technology, you don't have to extract the data out in memory and then write it back. Everything just fits in memory, so everything just works faster. So the advantage of hybrid is tremendous. We're just trying to make sure that it works for planning use cases. So we work with S-based team, and then we're going to roll that out very soon. So that's in a nutshell what's coming out in a few months, and then probably next year on-prem.
Okay. This is an important topic, especially for folks who are coming in from on-prem. We just had a customer forum this morning when a lot of customers asked this question because we had a lot of on-prem customers, and some of the pain points are addressed by this. Essentially, what it means is that if you have multiple planning applications, which many of you in on-prem have, if you have on-prem deployments, Or if you have multiple products within the EPM portfolio, you have on-prem might be HFM and planning in the cloud sense. Since most of the EPM products are now on the cloud, if you have financial close, you have accounts reconciliation, you have tax reporting cloud service and planning, or if you have multiple PBCS or ePBCS applications, deployments, how do you allow a user to go across all those applications without having to remember to go to different URLs? How do you let them go across these applications without having to log in again? All those are taken care of. What this allows you to do, even if you're a totally new cloud customer, is to expand the horizon of your deployment across the enterprise. It allows you to have application owners who are distinct. They can own their own application. The end user doesn't care. If they have multiple application access, they can go across all those applications and have a single user experience. A planning example might be, you might have financial planning, workforce planning, sales planning. All three are different kind of use cases with different access points in the sense that workforce is very expense focused, sales planning might be more revenue focused, financial planning may be both. So in those cases, you might have overlapping users. The FP&A user might be going across all three. Sales planning may be restricted to only sales, workforce may be only workforce. So in those use cases, how do you allow those FP&A users to go traverse across those different applications without having to remember and different URLs to go to, right? So the way the navigation flows works is folks who are, obviously many of you are familiar with the workspace in the on-prem world. I kind of bucketed this into three different use cases, right? You can navigate across different cloud services. And this could be different planning applications, or it could be going across a close and a financial planning application, for example. That you can do a flip chart kind of navigation, just like folks who remember workspace, they can do there, right? You can go across different applications. The user goes to app 1, app 2, app 3. It could be multiple planning applications or different EPM applications. They don't have to log in again. They just log in once, they go in, click another one, it opens in place, or it opens as a new window. The second use case is, this is not possible in on-prem at all, or in the workspace. This is where you can create blended mashups of different UIs. So these two represent that. So the first one is where you have the home page. Within the home page, you have each icon represented by a different application, or within this iPhone terminology, this could be a folder. We call it a cluster. So within a cluster, you could have different icons. Each of them could be representing a different application or different artifacts from various applications. Use case might be, you might have app 1 might be, in my case, financial planning, app 2, workforce or sales. Right? You can even do it at this level. Or you can even do business process, where revenue is the first icon, showing all the revenue forms. Icon 2 would be expense forms. Icon 3 would be reports. So you can do it that way. The third way to do it would be, user interface mashups, where you can actually create mashups, where you have different tabs representing different workflow items, which means first form could be a dashboard, first tab could be a dashboard, second tab could be a form, third tab could be a report, all three coming from different applications. So it really opens up your possibilities for customizing and representing artifacts from various applications commingled together to the user, and the user not even caring or doesn't have to care that they are coming from different places in the organization. From their standpoint, it's all one single access. Right? So that's kind of a high-level view. I did do a demo of this at the Sunday symposium, but in the interest of time, I'll actually put a slide with that demo in here so you can actually go through that. So how this works is essentially you have source and target applications. You go to any of these source applications, which could be of type subscription, PBCS, ePBCS, FCCS, or TRCS, which is a tax reporting cloud service, financial close, enterprise planning, or the planning cloud service. So any of these applications, subscription types, you can go in and set your connection to any of the outer ones, which could be, you're just connecting one planning application to another, or you're connecting a planning to a close. So it could be any combination of these. So once you do this setup, how do you do this setup, right? Essentially, you go to the source application, you have a new icon called connections, you hit the connections. This is done by the system administrator, service administrator of that application, which is the source application. Then they get to pick what is their target application type, right? It could be just another planning application, which could be either of these two, or any of the other ones which we already have on the cloud. You pick the subscription type, then you mention the URL. By now you already have a subscription, so you know the URL. You mention the URL, and it's a login of that service administrator to the target. Obviously, you won't have access until you're given access by the target application. Once the target application has defined your access, you will be accessing that. Once this setup is complete and the connection is complete, all the users, then the next step is basically saying, okay, how do I want to define each of those cards in terms of what they represent? If you see this is basically just like your mapping of your network drives. You can see the 3 applications which have been connected to. So local is my source, and then the 2 target applications I've connected into. When I highlight any one, in this case, you can't see it clearly, but it's the financial plan application, which is my target. I see all the artifacts, which means it could be a dashboard, it could be a form, it could be a report. All those are shown to me, and I can say, okay, what do I want to pick to represent? It could be in a card, or it could be in a tab in that slide I showed previously. You just have to define where do you want to represent, and in this screen you pick what you want to represent. It could be a single report, it could be a list of reports, single form, list of forms, however you choose to have it, right? Once you have it, the user just gets that experience which I showed in that previous screen, right? So I went through a little bit fast, but it's definitely very powerful for all users. So once that happens in that integrated, in this flow, essentially the end user doesn't really care. At that point, they get their artifacts represented to them, and their access rights are defined by the target application. If the user has access, they will see that tab. If they don't have access, they won't see that tab. It's as simple as that. So there's no access issues. It's only the service administrator connects first. All the end users just consume it based on their access rights to that target applications. Okay. The next piece which we are simplifying from a user interface standpoint is the user preferences. Now you have user preferences in planning, you have user preferences in FR reports, you have user preferences in Smart View. So you're essentially bringing that all into one place. So you set it up in one place, and it just gets inherited wherever you choose to consume it. So it's just one place for you to go to define stuff. Right, so that's what's something which we are working towards in the next couple of months to deliver. Okay? Audit reports. I have more than 60 enhancements from various cloud customers asking for this feature. So obviously very important from a customer standpoint, allowing every customer to see who updated what cell at what point in time and what is the change they did from old value to new value. So this is again coming in the next couple of months. You can filter by various criteria, export the whole file, and have fun with Microsoft pivot tables at that point, right? Okay, good.
So that ability is still available in the application settings that they can go check. I want to keep an audit trail of my data. Then I can go back and log a ticket to get the audit trail.
Right now you do have to, but once this feature comes in, we have the option to enable what you want to enable. So you have enable audit, which is already existing right now. So we're just surfacing that in the new UI where you can enable it. Once you enable it, you will have the ability to view the audit. Right now, even in on-prem world, you have to query against the table or create your own report against the SQL queries to generate that. Here, we never had an interface into that audit table. So we are giving that to you in the new interface in the cloud.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
Yes, is there going to be a time frame of how long or how far back that was supposed to go? I know currently right now in job console you can search in the simplified interface.
Yeah.
If you look at previous jobs, there's no way to export, months jobs process months ago to Excel. So is there a limit how far back it was?
6 months.
Yeah, we are currently, we don't, but we are planning for 6 months on that. So the question was, how long do you persist that audit table? So we are planning for 6 months worth of audit to be persisted in for you to export out. And then you can, so that's the plan, okay?
You'd be able to, they don't have any technical functionality from the DPMLA perspective that would
Yeah, so
Yeah, that'll be probably the next step. You want to export this out. So this is basically going to be supported through the schedule. So once you can schedule it, you will be then able to run that through EPM Automate.
And there's a question at the back.
Scott, go ahead. No, there shouldn't be any impact.
the
And
question?
that's something, the question was, is there any impact on the performance on the database size based on the history of audit? I told 6 months. On-prem, we don't even restrict that, right? So I've had customers in on-prem who have had this audit for a very long time, and there's been no impact. It's all in relational, so it doesn't have any end-user impacts here. Yeah.
Does this include usage monitoring of users that log in, so who log in?
That's a different report which already exists right now. So if you go to the
No, but it doesn't tell you like who logged in, it just tells how many people logged in.
no, it tells you which user and from which IP address. There is a report, system report, which does that. I can show it to you after the session if you want. Okay. And then lastly, predictive analytics is something which one of the innovations you saw in that roadmap slide was around predictive. So there's been a lot of talk internally in terms of how do we leverage planning platform and innovate around it, right? So I don't think I had that in the last column in that roadmap slide around innovation. Innovation was around search-based planning, planning by exception. How do we enable search-based planning around that? Predictive planning is another place where Crystal Ball has a lot of features. It's a separate product sold on-prem. We are in current efforts to bring all those features into the cloud platform so that EPM products can leverage that. From a planning context, there's a lot of use cases for that. And Prasad, you want to just throw some light on what innovations we're doing there?
Yeah, so how many customers actually know what is available in predictive planning or use Crystal Ball? Okay, there's some of them. How many customers actually do forecasting, by the way? Is just annual operating plan is one, but how many do you use forecasting? Okay, quite a few. So what our thought process here is that there's a lot of ways you can do forecasting, and we would like to have a intelligence built into when you do forecasting. So sometimes, I'm sure when you do manual forecasting, people just use last year's actual, I'm going to just apply some kind of 5% up, 5% down, and that is your forecast. And then you actually, when you have rolling forecast for 13 months, 18 months rolling forecast, you actually adjust the forecast, right? That's how you do it, I guess, right? So what predictive forecasting allows you is that you can use statistical modeling techniques to do the forecasting. So it pretty much a regression analysis where you can actually go and mine the data and find out what is the correlation between drivers and what is the seasonality trend looks like, and then it allows you to give you ability to forecast based on that. And if you want to forecast based on your past history, then it's easier for you to actually do it rather than just taking the raw data and applying percentage up and down. So that's a little bit more sophisticated, and you can run. So that's one aspect which is already available in the cloud. We are also looking at. So again, there are different techniques. So there's a statistical forecasting. There's a machine learning. So you actually can optimize your algorithms along the way based on the data, and then that's the machine learning aspect which we're investing in, and we are looking at how to actually give that ability for our customers to use that technique. Simulation is just a standard simulation where I can run 1,000 runs, and it actually allows me to give different values based on the probability. So if I actually want to have certain number, it also allows you to give you a probability of hitting that number, and the customer can say, or the user can say, okay, I want to pretty much pick that range and apply that, and that can become your forecast. And optimization is actually, it's a kind of almost available, and it's available in strategic modeling already, but we are looking at also implementing in the planning, which is basically pretty much a goal seek, where I would like to define my end goal, and I want you to back solve it and find out what is my driver, what is my unit time rate look like. Because at the end of the day, I like to see my revenue to be 10 million or 100 million, and you want me to solve the back solve the model and then give me the input numbers, and then you can use those and adjust few numbers here and there, and that actually gives you a starting point. So again, the whole idea here in the predictive analytics of forecasting and risk analysis is all about using the machine power to do the work for you, and then you actually decide whether whatever is computer by computer is good for you. You can discard it, because you can do many runs very fast within very short period of time, and then whatever you feel right, you accept it, and then you can make that as a adjustment. So rather than just using a gut feel or having a model on the side doing the calculation, this will allow you to do the system, within the system itself to get the number. So that's the kind of a roadmap or futuristic STEM we are looking at. It. One part is already done. The simulation is already available in on the desktop. We will be building it in the web. Optimization is already available in strategic modeling, and machine learning is something we are looking at investing in.
You can take questions, I think.
Yeah, I think that was probably the last one. We can open up any questions over there.
For the hybrid application, can you, is there any development for the parent level and the cross-chemistry?
So the question is, if you want to use hybrid S-based, is there a development involved to change the dynamic calc, right? That's the question? Parent level. Yeah. So hybrid, when we actually release hybrid on the cloud, we will give ability to say that this is a hybrid model. But in order for you to change, you still have to change your model from, if you have members which are stored at the upper level, in order to take the hybrid advantage of the hybrid, you have to convert those members to be a dynamic calc. And once you do that, you will be able to do cube refresh, and then your cube size will go smaller, and of course you will get the benefits of hybrid. So there is some minimum work involved for the hybrid adoption. Yes?
I'm going to branch off that last question for one, and if you don't mind, I have another question in terms of strategic modeling. Regarding hybrid ASO, or hybrid BSO, excuse me, that there are times when you actually need to have upper level members from a sparse dimension actually be stored for specific calculations. But with hybrid BSO, you have the capability of having some dimensions dynamic and some dimensions not. Would that capability be available with PBCS? And then there's from a hybrid BSO perspective, is it going to be by plan type, or you're basically saying this model is hybrid BSO?
So the question is basically hybrid, when you roll out hybrid in PBCS, what kind of flexibility will it offer? Will it offer to make certain dimensions sparse, certain dimension dense, certain dimensions sparse, but some members within dimensions still stored? And then is it going to be allowed to make the hybrid per plan type or at the application level? And right now we are in the design phase. A lot of those are good questions. We are actually contemplating various things, but we definitely know that we will not be able to make everything sparse. We'll have to allow customers to make certain members within the hierarchy as store. We know that, and we will allow to do that. The question is, I think at the end of the day, in order for you to take advantage of hybrid, we'll probably looking at how much hybridization you've done. If you actually have done hybrid and if you have made everything store, then that doesn't remain a hybrid. So those kind of things. So it's, again, there is no fixed rule. We'll probably come with some heuristic, and we'll share that with you guys.
And then on a strategic modeling, does that require the financials business framework?
The question is, the strategic modeling, does it require financials framework? From the commercial perspective, yes. From the technical perspective, no. Yes.
Is there a plan to update UI calculator or data management, or possibly embed them in Simplified Interface?
Okay, the question is there a plan to embed Calc Manager and FDM EE UI to make it simplified and embed as part of the suite? Yes. Actually, in the matter of fact, we are right now working on FDM EE as a first simplification project. And Calc Manager, again, the thought process is we probably make it, and that both projects, the thought process will get embedded as part of the application itself rather than a separate interface. So while you're designing form, you will be able to write a rule. While designing form, you will be able to load data. Or while using the form, you're able to load data. So it should be part of the workflow rather than separate process. So that's the thought process. Sorry, say that again? In future, or you'll be able to delete a dimension in the planning. We have that requirement, actually, honestly, since last 18 years. I think we have been able to live without that, so I'm not sure. Any other question? Yes? So the question is, in the cloud, there's a restriction of 3 plant types. Are you looking at in future to expose that to add more plant types? Actually, our solution for extending more plant types is to buy more services, and then Stitch, the EPM Connect, actually allows you to connect them together. So from the end user perspective, they don't know whether they're actually talking to one plant type or 5th plant type in different service. Yeah, so the question is, will that work with the different parts? Yes, it will work within different parts, across the parts, across data center. Any other question?
Okay, thanks everybody for coming over. Have a good conference.
Thank you.